Hi, welcome back to the C Morning Show, everyone. It is 7:15 and time for our first discussion of the day. Now, taking place in Hiroshima, Japan, the Y7 Summit 2023, which is a discussion forum between youth from the G7 member countries such as the United States, United Kingdom, Germany, France, Canada, Italy, and Japan, was held from April the 9th until the 13th.
Although Indonesia is not a member of G7, Indonesia has 5 representatives at the meeting as observers on several issues. Discussed in the forum, not without a reason. Indonesia was invited because of its role as a G20 host in 2022 and Asian chairmanship next month.
That's right. Now, what issues were discussed during the forum and how important was Indonesia's participation at this Y7 summit in 2023? Well, we're going to find out the answers, hopefully, because we do have with us, joining us this morning, is one of Indonesian observers at the Y7 summit, a friend of the program as well, Angelo Wijaya. Hi, Angelo.
Welcome
Good
back.
morning.
Hi, Paul. Hi,
Welcome back.
Morning. Thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, so how was it? I mean, you just got back?
Yes, I got back a couple of days ago.
Okay.
It was really great. I mean, the season was really good as well. The weather is nice, so it supported to build the ambience among the people there.
Very nice. So let's jump right into it, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering about the issue was discussed at the summit.
Yeah. So there are 5 issues that were discussed throughout the negotiations. The first one is economic resilience. The second one is digital innovation and transformation. The third one is climate and environment. The fourth one, which is for me is pretty interesting, is global health and happiness.
Oh, nice.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the fifth one is peace and security. So on economic resilience, we talk about the role of young people in strengthening economic resilience among countries, right? Which includes youth entrepreneurship and also equal access for opportunities for young people.
Okay.
On digital innovation and transformation, we talk about how we could strengthen digital privacy, digital rights, because young people care about that, and also how should we govern digital spaces moving forward.
Okay.
The third one, we talk about climate change and the importance of providing equal access to equitable and just transition, especially for developing countries, low and middle income countries. Okay. On global health and happiness, you see that Japan is trying to advance its interest on
It's
happiness.
very trend on the country.
Yes.
Right?
Seeing at the G20, the discussion is mostly about One Health, global health, but Japan is trying to push its agenda here.
I remember that they have a special ministry about the happiness.
I think
they hire
Yeah, I've heard of
person
something
as
like
a
that.
ministry of happiness.
But it sounds very unique. But really, what it is, it's tackling a lot of mental health issues, I suppose,
Yeah.
right? That is happening around the world,
Yeah.
right?
And the last one is actually what, takes a lot of attention among the delegates and observers, which is peace and security and the role of young people in peace and security. But also we discussed and we spent a lot of time discussing the, Russia's invasion of Ukraine as well in the discussion.
Okay. What about the youth role in peace and security?
Yeah.
What was discussed in that particular?
So
area?
actually, young people, right? Because we're not part of the system, we're not part of the government. Sometimes we can foster dialogue among each other. We can foster understanding, and to understand that, for example, in Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it's not the decision of young people, it's not the willingness of young people to do such thing, but it's more on the government's side, right? So young people are calling for peace building, how young people can foster people-to-people exchange, and build peace from that.
Even though decisions aren't made by the youth, it certainly affects the youth just as much, if not more.
The voice of the youth is very important.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So we know that Indonesia, we mentioned, is not part of the G7 member countries. However, was invited as a guest due to the G20 that went off successfully last year, and the ASEAN summit that's set to take place very soon, next month.
Next month.
And hopefully will go just as well. Now, in your opinion, how important is Indonesia's participation at this particular Y7 summit?
Right. I can't emphasize enough how important it is for Indonesia to be invited and to participate in Y7 and G7 summits this year. But let me try to contextualize my answer, right?
Okay.
So the G7, as you know, is the informal grouping of the 7 most advanced economies in the world. When it was created back in the 1970s, it represented about 70% of global GDP. But as recent as 2021, it shrunk to only 40%, right? And at the same time, developing countries, which are included in BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, this year they have just surpassed the
Yeah.
GDP of
Yeah.
G7.
Yeah.
So that will shift the relationship between these countries, especially in global governance.
Yes.
And at the same time, there's a growing appetite among these countries to have more influence in global governance and have more say. And also, there's a growing appetite among the G7 to revisit global governance and the role of these developing countries, especially under Japan's leadership. So, the role of Indonesia, not only as the host of G20 last year and also the chairman of ASEAN this year, but also the fact that in the next few decades, in the 2040s, Indonesia is expected to be the fourth largest economy in the world. That signifies the importance of Indonesia's voice to be heard in global governance. So I think that is very important for Indonesia to be there in G7, even as observers, right? But to show and voice its opinion and to influence decision making as well.
So you think this is more like basically a lead up and a segue to something greater and larger for us down the road?
Yeah, because it becomes more relevant because any other countries are growing, especially in the economic sector. And also the youth generation, because we have a bonus demographic as well. So basically it's really important to have the roles of a young generation for the world. So basically 5 representatives were delegated to go to Japan, including yourself. You must have a lot of experience to share, but I wonder, how is the selection process?
Right. So the delegation of Indonesian observers were selected by an organization called Indonesian Youth Diplomacy.
Oh, I already see. Right.
Yeah. So it's a public selection process. It's a month-long process where young people from Indonesia and even abroad, as long as they're Indonesian citizens, they can apply. There are CV screenings involved, essay writing to show their opinions and how they will advocate for Indonesia's interest in Y7. And also the last one was interview to just vibe check the delegates, because it's very important to have people who know the social setting in that kind of environment.
To make sure that you represent us well.
Yes.
Do you know how many people apply?
Exactly. From how many people?
Yeah. I'm not sure about that because I don't really have visibility. But probably about like 100 to 200 people.
Wow.
There you go. Part of a very
That's
special
why
group.
People are sent.
What was the essay topic, by the way?
One of the 5 topics. So like each person will have to write about the topic that they're interested in.
Okay.
So,
And yours was.
What is your strong? Topics?
No, so I was representing the climate and environment topic. So I write about like how the importance of the G7 in meeting their demands, meeting their pledges, the $100 billion pledge for developing countries.
Okay, not an easy topic to write an essay about. Probably one of the toughest ones. Okay, so this event has come and gone as an observer for that particular topic we talked about, climate and environment. What key points did you learn from the discussion?
There are a lot of things that I learned throughout the discussion, right? But I think one of the most important learnings is how we position ourselves as an observer in Y7. And because throughout the negotiation, I reminded them on, number one, the $100 billion commitment from developed countries, from the G7 members to developing countries and low and middle income countries to strengthen their climate actions, to further their climate commitment as well, right? But other things include the fact that we want greater representation of young people in global governance and global policy making, including the G7 Climate Club. Because last year at the G7 summit in Germany, the G7 established the G7 Climate Club, which seeks to strengthen the climate actions in developing countries. Like one of them is through the climate financing. So we ask for a greater role of young people in G7 Climate Club as well, because this year Indonesia is invited as a member of G7 Climate Club. So those things are what we pushed, greater representation of young people, but also the commitments that have been made in the past.
You mentioned already that Indonesia will be invited to the G7
Climate Club.
Climate Club.
The summit as well.
The summit as well. And our president, Mr. Joko will attend as a guest. Do you have any expectations or hope for the upcoming summit?
I mean, just like other Y7 delegates and observers, we really hope that the recommendations that we have put forth in the Y7 final communique will be taken up to the G7 leaders declaration because they will meet next month. But also, as young people, other than on digital transformation, One Health, and economic resilience, we really hope that G7 could advance and strengthen their climate actions.
Okay.
We want them to help more developing countries in meeting their climate targets, but also I think most importantly is how the G7 should revisit their relationship with developing countries and low and middle income countries, because we see the rise of BRICS and the rising importance of G20. So to remain relevant, the G7 should really think its place in global governance. And I think the last thing that I'd like to mention is the fact that I heard from our Japanese colleagues that next month, G7 leaders, so prime ministers and presidents, they will talk about ChatGPT.
Oh,
Is
wow.
that right?
Yeah. Okay. So how should a global guideline on generative AI, should look like? And I think that's very important for young people
It's really important.
we use it every day now.
We live with the AI.
Very relevant, isn't it?
Exactly.
And a lot of unanswered questions. I mean, we discuss this all the time here on the program. We're like, where do we stand morally? More importantly, where do we stand legally? Like, we don't know how this is all, where this all is going to take us. And every time we ask somebody, nobody seems to have the answer. So it's time for it to be discussed on the large table. So, Angelo, you're not new to this now. You've been an Indonesian representative at several major global events now as an observer. And do you think that there is a shift in the thinking of, now that there's always youth involved at these global events, do you see there a shift taking place, changes taking place as now the youth, as Shafira mentioned, does have a greater voice these days? Are those voices being heard and are changes being made?
Right. This is a delicate question. I think for now, having young people at the table is important to ensure that the voices are heard at least. But on influencing the decision itself, I think more has to be done.
Okay.
At Y7, I think, or G7, I think the effort is there already. For example, in 2021, during Y7 UK, the G7 leaders actually adopted one paragraph of the final communique of Y7, which was on mental health.
Oh,
yeah. So I think
that's the issue from the young generation.
So I think more of that should be done these days, and young people should not shy away from saying, their concerns and to be brave to actually put forth their recommendations to G7 leaders and other global leaders.
So it's a start, and it's a great start so far.
Amazing. Amazing. I see more hopes then for the future.
Well, I mean, sometimes it feels like, especially in the early stages, like, should we even speak up because who's going to listen anyway? It's just a bunch of these government officials that aren't taking us seriously. But I see a shift. That's why I asked. I see a shift in where world leaders are now looking to the youth to say, hey, this is going to be your future, so what do you want from it? And then you can tell us, and perhaps some of those recommendations, if not all, at least some of those can be heard.
Because they will delegate the throne of the leading of the country to the young generation.
These are our future world leaders.
Exactly. If you still remember back then, the leader of the world is from young generations. Like the late of Queen Elizabeth, she rules the country. She rules the Great Britain when she was very young.
Absolutely.
Exactly. So we need more young generation like you and more voice to be heard.
That's right. Lead us in the right direction. Angelo, thank you so much for dropping by.
Thank you so much for coming.
Always glad to have you. What's next for you? I mean, you can take a quick break. And
new job?
Actually, yes. As I mentioned, I will start a new job soon.
Congratulations.
So we'll see a rebalancing there.
Best of luck for you. All the best. All right, we'll take another break where we will have more updates from abroad, and we still have more talk show. Something.
Cooking.
Cooking.
Yes.
Something.
I'm hungry.
When we return, please stay with us.